This week on Entrepreneurs, we are exploring the future of media, from good old-fashioned journalism to digital media platforms. I'm Jack Delosa, and Entrepreneurs starts now.
This is Entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs, where we talk directly to the founders of Australian businesses, from startups and small business owners to the icons of industry. Tonight, we speak to the founders shaping the future of media, from social media influencers and millennial media platforms to kids and their digital media habits. Joining me as panel experts, we have the co-founder of Pedestrian TV, Chris Wirasana. Pedestrian TV is a digital media platform aimed squarely at millennials. It might have been called a media experiment more than 10 years ago. However, it was recently sold at a valuation of $100 million. To my right, we are also joined by Jules Lund, founder of Tribe, a 3-year-old business which focuses on influencer marketing, and Meena Tamaraja, a children's media expert. Chris, we might start with you. Talk to us about Pedestrian TV. I mean, that's been an amazing journey. Why did you start?
So we started with really, I think, like honourable kind of, like we were really young. We were like in our early 20s, and we were looking around, and this was pre-YouTube, like, and all the things that we loved in, you know, kind of our worlds, like, you know, music festivals, you know, kind of designer labels. We were sort of seeing things like Subi at the time, and, you know, like they just weren't being covered with video. And so we were like, we need to create some video content. We wanted to create a TV show initially, but then we didn't like the fact that there would be like 3 decision makers at the time that could say no, and you wouldn't get it up and running. And so we looked at different ways to distribute it. And so the first thing that Pedestrian actually was like a DVD magazine, similar to all the content on the website at the moment, but like all filmed and edited together.
And launched when it was said that millennials was kind of turning their back on media. However, you guys targeted millennials and obviously attracted them in the millions. How do you think you achieved that?
It's a really boring answer, but to be honest, like, I think if you want to attract people to any type of media company, it's consistency, right? Like, you just got to do what you do well and do it day in, day out. So, you know, we're publishing like 30 stories a day and about like 3 videos going out a day. Like, and they need to be consistently good, because, like, you know, especially in this day and age, if you make a mistake, like, people will, you know, they'll hang you up to dry. And so it's just that quality control and consistency, and like having a kind of point of view. And so, like, Pedestrian's got quite a strong tone of voice. You know, like, it has swearing in articles. You know, we like use humour and comedy and, like, you know, different ways of kind of reporting. And I think that's something that's, you know, like, we talk to the audience in their voice, and that's really resonated with them.
It is a brand that stands out quite significantly. I mean, you mentioned tone of voice and swearing. What do you think the key differentiators have been for Pedestrian?
Key differentiators would be, I mean, from a business standpoint, I think we've been able to commercialise the content really well.
Right. So
we've seen people who can create great content, and there's creatives out there who are, you know, they can put together amazing stories, they can put together great videos, but they haven't probably been as good as us in terms of, like, then going to someone like a Telstra or a Commonwealth Bank and explaining how those brands can kind of unlock similar value in their businesses to target that same audience.
Right, right. And Jules, you've got 3-year-old Tribe.
Yeah. Yeah, I was fascinated by that, but you're absolutely right. It's one of those key differentiators, is actually being able to unlock it for some of those corporates that don't know how to, I suppose, connect with millennials. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Why is that surprising for you?
Well, I think it's important because what you start to see around the globe is people-powered entrepreneurship. So, like the people and the masses that disrupted the taxi industry, or like the people and the masses that disrupted the accommodation industry, when you start to see that there's young people that are actually teaching the incumbents exactly how to do branded content, to write, it's modernising it.
100%. I mean, that's like, for us, we were at that point in where digital video cameras had just become like affordable. So, you know, previously, if you wanted to create something for broadcast or television, you'd have to buy a camera that cost $100,000. And when we were launching Pedestrian about 2004, you could buy like a documentary quality camera for about $4 or $5 grand. And you know, the same thing with editing software. Like previously, you'd need to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into editing suites, and then that had come down, and you could like do it on a Mac. So
Jules, you mentioned the changing landscape. Tribe is obviously a great brand that sort of speaks to that changing landscape.
Yep.
Talk to us about what Tribe does.
So Tribe is a self-serve tech marketplace that connects thousands of brands with their own influential customers in many ways, and it helps those brands turn their own brand fans not only into marketers through influencer marketing, but helps turn their own customers into their creative departments. So much the way that Chris was talking about editing software, you know, smartphones now are just so powerful, and it means that everyone on the street, in fact, every brand's own customers can actually create marketing quality content that can sit on anything from billboards to social advertising, and it just comes at a really important time. So we have two types of campaigns on Tribe where small businesses or global brands will go on and they'll put up a brief, and then we have tens of thousands of creatives, which are just everyday people that can actually say, I love that brand, I use it, I'm going to promote it, or better yet, I'm not even going to publish that I love that brand, I'm just going to submit beautiful content that you can use for your own advertising.
Jules, when you were doing the radio thing, Fifi and Jules show, you actually led the Facebook page. It became the most engaged brand page in the entire country. Was that a bit of a platform or an eye-opener for you to go, there's a whole lot of potential here and I might have a crack at it?
Yeah, and I said, I'm going to stop digging for gold and start selling shovels. Because I realised that if I was able to engage this social tribe and build it with my minimal skills, it just went to show that social media has opened up this platform where everyday people can build their own tiny little pockets of influence. And, you know, years ago, the attention of the masses was held by TV channels or radio networks, and there was only like 3 for each, or print. Whereas now the attention of the masses is held by millions of everyday people through social media. So brands are saying, how do we enter those conversations? And I realised it was through social media influencers.
Let's talk about influence.
Yep.
How real is it, do you think, that this social media influence,
Yep.
and how is it measured or quantified, if you like?
Well, look, the most important thing is to understand what influencer marketing is not, and it's not performance marketing. So with click-through attribution, Instagram isn't built for that. It's not an e-commerce site yet, until next year when it explodes. So the 3 ROIs to influencer marketing is really, the first one is word-of-mouth marketing at scale, because we know a brand saying, I'm awesome, is not nearly as credible as someone you trust saying, this brand is awesome. Right? And the second one is about using technology to turn those customers into a creative department, saving you time and money that you would ordinarily be spending on models and photographers and stylists. You know, these everyday people can do all. And then the third is actually just increased ad performance. So when you've got, you know, 500 pieces of content that you can put into direct marketing channels like Google and Facebook, it's going to perform much better than just having one video that you've tried to repurpose for everything. And so it's a really exciting space, because it's not easy to unlock all of those opportunities unless you have a lot of people.
It's an incredibly fascinating space, particularly right now, and trying to think, what is it going to become?
Yeah.
Chris and Jules are both going to hang around for the rest of the show so we can continue talking about exactly that. When we return, we navigate the world of children and media. A dangerous combination or a great opportunity? Stay tuned.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. Joining us on the panel is Pete Field, the founder of a startup called Avery, and Meena Thamaraja, an entrepreneur and expert in children's media platforms. Meena, let's begin with you. This is a fascinating topic. I'm sure any parent would agree. Talk to us about how you got started.
So I studied design at uni, and I managed to get my dream job working at the ABC, designing digital media projects. And I happened to be there at the time the iPads got launched. Just after they launched, we started seeing videos of kids, really little kids, playing with iPads, and it blew us away. At the time, I mean now, it's kind of like, yeah, that's commonplace, but back then it was really, I guess, revolutionary for us. And so off the back of those videos, I pitched and developed a suite of apps for kids for Play School. So they're still popular today, even though they're really old. But the thing that was really compelling was that we got feedback from parents of hearing impaired kids who were the kids were hearing their voices for the first time using the app.
Wow.
We had kids who were, had autism. They were using the app to communicate with, and so that was really powerful for me. And that's why I'm doing children's media.
Incredibly fulfilling work, I would imagine. What are some of the more fascinating insights you've discovered about children and their media habits, how they consume media, particularly on digital platforms?
So I think one that's really interesting for parents is the way gameplay and video watching is really intertwined. So parents are really familiar, I think, with children watching videos of kids playing games, and they don't really understand it. It seems boring. But what's actually happening is they're trying to understand their world. They are trying to skill up, and they're trying to find the treasures in a game, but they're also really trying to understand how to be accepted by other gamers. And they're learning what's funny. Often the videos are really funny. And so they're just really trying to understand their world.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't have children, but I've got many friends that do. And often, the 2-year-old will walk up to the TV and they'll kind of swipe it because they think it's going to swipe like a smartphone.
I do that sometimes.
Perhaps we're all guilty of it from time to time. But what's your take on, children have grown up in this world where they know nothing else. What's your observation of that?
I think really the most compelling thing is that digital media has meant that kids can create media and upload it. And so those children, what's really fascinating for them is to see other children's work. And so they don't just get encouraged to create their own work, but they get inspired by that as well.
Now, Pete, your startup Avery recently took out top prize in the Media Night Pitch competition at Fishburner's startup community. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
That's a huge milestone. Tell us about Avery.
Yeah, so Avery is a platform. We create these 3D virtual worlds, mostly for following objects around in the 3D space. So it's like Google Earth, but where Google Earth focuses on large stationary objects, we follow things that move, like athletes, drones, autonomous vehicles, animals.
Wow.
And we tell the story of that journey and bring people into this virtual world where you can look around, but you're always following this thing and discovering where it goes and what it feels like to be there.
What's the application of that, or the applications, I should say?
Yeah, it is applications.
Yeah.
So, look, we've focused a lot on sports right now. Paragliders were our initial market that just took us up and absolutely loved it. We're the Strava of paragliding. Every paraglider uses this platform to share their flights. But we're seeing a lot of traction in ultramarathons, and there is commercial drone operators that need to report on their flights, so this is a use for them. We've also had animal migration tracking done, where they're seeing visually in 3D where these animals fly and how migration is changing over time, and all sorts of research around that, because otherwise you're looking at it on 2D maps or charts and it's just not experiential. So this is something that anybody can go to and now experience what this data is telling us.
That is incredibly exciting. How do you see Avery fitting into the traditional and digital media space?
Well, it's interesting. When we first started this at CSIRO, we used to call them visualizations, and we went through a few other names before we realized this is a scene, and it is a type of media. But because it comes from data, that's not an obvious thing at first. So it's sort of where does that line go from, this is a type of data to this is telling a story? And we see a lot of our use in sports probably being in second screen. So you're maybe watching, Tour de France on your big screen, and they've got the videos from the helicopters and that sort of thing, but you can look at any racer at any point on the stage in our platform.
That is truly fascinating. And so what are you learning at the moment, and how do you see Avery evolving into the future?
So I'm learning a ton. I mean, as a startup, and because we're really in a lot of ways creating a new industry and a new type of media, the pricing and sales and delivery and how all of that works is really interesting. I also spend a lot of time trying to understand how the brain interprets information and what makes something interesting and engaging for people. So that's sort of the big learnings that we're working with right now.
And Mina, I just want to come back to you for the final question for this particular segment around parents and managing children on digital devices. What advice can you give to parents navigating that terrain, and can we somehow make this sort of media revolution into a positive?
I think it is positive.
Same.
I think the best thing the parents can do is to experience digital media with their children.
Right.
So that'll mean that they can give their opinion about what's going on, and it won't just be a 15-year-old playing Fortnite that's going to affect the behaviour of their children.
Again, a fascinating discussion. We have more coming up after the break. We debate the future of media with our expert panel. Stay tuned for that.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. We're talking about the future of media, and it's time to do a little crystal ball gazing with our expert panel. Chris, Jules and Mina are back to continue the conversation around where media is going. Now, let's sort of start at the top, if you like. There's a bit of doom and gloom around particularly where traditional media is heading. Where do you guys see the media landscape going in the foreseeable future, at least? Chris?
I mean, I think I'd like to see, this is what I would like to see. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but I would like to see media businesses acting a bit more like startups, like, you know, doing more experiments, releasing MVP products. They've got huge scale audiences, which is what like most startups will die for.
Yeah.
And they've got audiences that trust them in most cases, but they're just not monetizing those audiences as well as they could. And there doesn't seem to be much of a desire to kind of innovate or like, you know, kind of build little products and just throw them out there and see what happens. And I think, you know, that would be really exciting if we start to see more media companies doing that.
Jules, where do you see it all going?
Look, to be honest, I started in TV and then I moved into radio. I'm now into social media. So when I sort of look back over those eras, I have certainly noticed that when I go back into TV that the power has been lost in many ways. And
What have you, when you say the power's been lost, what's the change that you noticed?
The shine, the clout. Personally, I love the fragmentation. Like, I love niche programs like this, but yet what I think is happening to free-to-air is you just got to, it's like all or nothing and everything in between. What I would love to see is, you know, trying to give the younger generation of talent, whether it's TV presenters or actors, smaller shows that they can innovate and get off the ground, a bit like community television used to do, or what cable does. I think there's a huge opportunity there. When you look at all the talent that's born out of YouTube, you know, as you say, you've got masses of audience, you've got hours throughout the night. What happens if you're able to take those and reinvest it so we're not seeing the same TV formats that we've seen for the last 20 years?
Mina, where do you see it all going?
Look, I actually think that personalities are going to be really important. But I also think that we're going to see the rise of bigger companies that can really, how shall I put it, broadcasters and entities like Facebook, they've got some core values that are baked into their origins. And I think we'll see new companies that learn from the mistakes of those entities, and we'll see a totally different content emerging from
Absolutely, absolutely. And Chris, you mentioned monetizing. What are some of the, and a question for each of you, I might start with Chris, what are some of the key pillars, do you think, that traditional and digital media companies can start doing to better monetize their audience?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, first of all, I think they can serve, you know, most kind of, you know, revenue for a lot of those businesses comes from advertising.
Yeah.
I think the way they serve advertising clients isn't as strong as it could be. I think, you know, kind of unlocking what those companies do really well for those brands. Like, I think you still look at, you know, a lot of the TV networks, and, you know, I kind of go, you've got these, you know, kind of producers in there who come up with these great ideas for shows, things like The Block and, you know, all of that. But they're not applying that same thinking to brands. Like, it's different teams, and, you know, I think unlocking some of those kind of, you know, boundaries, especially away from, like, you know, potentially the news desks because of the whole church and state thing. But I think, yeah, like, just get better at, like, the monetizing through advertising first and foremost. And then, as I said, like, products, like, you know, look at other ways that you can offer value back to kind of your audience. So.
It's interesting you talk about branded content, because what's happened in the last sort of 10 years is every brand has become their own media company. So you look at everyone from Nike all the way down to the direct-to-consumer brands on Instagram. Everyone is generating content that tells a story. And so it is, yes, delivering on the brand values, and yes, it is selling it, but it's actually really entertaining. Whereas the TV that we've come from has obviously been interruptive. But what publishers like Pedestrian has done, you know, when you're combining with Nutella and you're doing some crazy cooking thing, it's engaging, but it is also delivering on branded content. And I actually think when you open up free-to-air to actually tell higher production stories that has that brand laid in, like the 3-minute or 4-minute videos that you'll have in a blog, some pretty cool things can happen.
Mina, do you have any sort of special insights, particularly dealing with the younger generation in how monetisation will happen in future in media?
Look, I think that with children it's really difficult with regard to monetisation. Parents don't like it when you are trying to sell products to kids. I think generally, I think that data is going to be something that big media companies in particular might look at monetising more. So that, I mean, you can already see the big media giants doing that.
Chris, you exited Pedestrian TV to Fairfax, quite a valuation of 100 mil, 12
$100 million.
So it's a valuation of 100 mil.
100 million. Real money.
Jules is my hype
Jules,
man.
you've got to do this.
I bring Jules out.
Can we get the camera?
We just zoom in on.
You're here.
Yes. Whoa, man.
Thanks, Jules.
Cool. Anyway, keep going.
Jules is happy with that. Jules is happy with that. Why do the investors see so much value in a platform like Pedestrian?
I mean, Pedestrian's been really good at engaging a youth audience, right? So like that's an audience that isn't watching TV.
Yeah.
They're the ones that's falling out of the sort of sieve of like mainstream media. So I think we've done a better job than anyone else in the market of capturing them and like, you know, delivering content to them and, you know, kind of monetizing and getting some great brands on board. And we took Jules to all the pitch meetings. And like, he just talks us up so well.
Pedestrian's awesome. Drop the mic.
All Jules is thinking right now is you're buying the wine after the show. That's
Man, do you need a lift home or anything, buddy?
I've got the chopper waiting for me.
Yeah. I know, I was speaking to your masseuse about your chopper.
Mina, in terms of children's attitudes towards media, how do you think they're going to be interacting with it in 10, 20 years? I know that's an incredibly long time frame, but is it going to be all-encompassing?
Yeah, and I think that the division between the physical and the virtual world will be kind of invisible.
Yes.
I know that in China, you know, virtual reality labs are kind of built standard into schools.
Yeah.
So I think the really interesting stuff is going to happen in education and media.
Yeah, I agree.
Jules, you see that now. You see 2-year-olds go up to a TV and they'll try to swipe it.
That's what I said that in the second segment tonight. Yeah,
it's like,
it happens.
It's like, why, you know,
it's crazy.
And they kind of go, why can't you do that?
Right.
Because you should be able to, you know, like the interactivity of like all devices and media and, you know, so whether it's, I mean, you know, we saw some amazing 3D mapping before.
Yeah.
Like if you can't, like that's what people want, right? Like they want to be more immersed in media and everything like that. Like media is still very much watching things happen on a screen or like from a distance or listening to it from a distance. Whereas like people, you know, they want to jump inside what they're seeing.
Absolutely. Jules, very quickly to finish, we've got a mutual friend in Osher Ginsberg and he says, and I'm not going to do it justice because he says a lot of meaningful things around the future of media, but one of the things he says is when YouTube buy the rights to the NFL, we will know that the entire landscape has changed. When large sporting events and large things that have traditionally lived on traditional media start to be owned by the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Netflix, he said, game over. What does he mean by that, and can you articulate on that a little bit?
Okay, can I phone a friend? Osher, what the hell did you mean by that thing you said with Jack over a couple of wines? Look, to be honest, what he's basically saying is there are predominantly four major players on the globe, and they're continually just eating up more and more. And so we've got everything from, you know, Apple, Amazon, Facebook and Google, and so they start to join and sadly it starts to get a little bit more frightening, but more exciting as well, because people like Chris can make heaps of money.
And that's a good thing. Watch this space in terms of the future of media. It is evolving incredibly effectively. That's all we have time for tonight. Next week, we take an in-depth look at Australia's startup landscape, and you can tune in anytime on Foxtel Go and the catch-up section of yourmoney.com.au. Thanks for watching. I'm Jack Delosa. Good night.